It's so nice to be here. Thank you very much for inviting me. Um, uh, Also so early. So if I seem a little weird, it's just because I work by myself, so I don't usually speak a lot in the morning. I just like to work in front of my computer and create. But I will show you, I'm going to talk about what I do and how I do it. And then I'd like to hear about what you're interested in. I'll just start with, I am the author and the illustrator, so I am not the designer. I don't lay out the text, but I started out doing graphic design, so I am very particular about my fonts and the way everything looks, and I really do design a lot of the book, and then I make the artwork. So here are the characters that I work with. Pinkalicious, who is, let me describe her as a very colorful character. She loves the color pink. She is a leader. She has, and a lot of these things I've done over 63 books. A lot of her characteristics have evolved through the books and through doing the TV show. I'm the executive producer of the PBS Kids show, Pinkalicious and Peterific. And I've had to come up with ideas for over 80 episodes. And now, hopefully, we're going into season 2. So that's a lot of stories that I have to come up with ideas for. I do that along with another producer and the head writer. But in coming up with these ideas, really, I've had to sort of figure out what the character of Pinkalicious is. And one of the main things about Pinkalicious is that she creates problems, but she has to solve all of her own problems. Nobody else can solve her problems. And often, like, the writers for the TV show will try to make the adults solve the problems. And I'm always like, no, she created it. She's got to figure her way out of it. So she's a leader. She's a very joyful character. She's can be naughty as well. She does things that kids do. She's very different than, say, Strawberry Shortcake because she gets into trouble. Now, this is kind of an interesting thing because I've been criticized for having her get into trouble. And it's very interesting because it's something that people don't like to see girl characters get into trouble, especially in picture books. Maybe it's more acceptable for a young adult, but in picture books, they want to see girl characters, female characters, be really well behaved. And so they don't want to see someone eating all the cupcakes because it's naughty. And so anyway, so she is slightly naughty. She gets into trouble, but she has to learn lessons. And the only way you learn lessons and you grow is by taking chances. Peter is a scene stealer. He has a sense of humor, and he's very, very funny, and he wants to do whatever Pinkalicious does. These are my own personal characters in my household. When I started working on these books, over on the far side is Leah Deer. I don't know if any of you know her. She's a senior. She is totally amazing. And you have to go tell her I said that. She said, please say I'm amazing. She is so amazing, and she's a lot of fun, and she's given me so many ideas for stories. She's very expressive. Christina graduated. She's a sophomore now. And my husband and I both went to art school. We don't know what we did wrong because she's in business school. So I don't know what happened. So I've done, my first book came out, it was Pinkalicious. It came out in 2006. And since then I've had over 63 books come out. And I've sold over 23 million copies. And so the picture books are the main ones: Pinkalicious, Purplicious, Glowalicious, Silverlicious, Emeraldalicious, Aqualicious. There's also Peterific, and then the early readers, and then the 8x8s, and their doodle books, and there's a cupcake book, etc. Somebody asked me the question: why is it that the main picture books did not have Pinkalicious in the title, or why did I do other colors? And from a licensing perspective, somebody said to me, you should have done that. We don't want to be your licensing agent because you didn't do that. And from just like a search for Google and for organizing in a library, it would have been better if I had done Pinkalicious loves Purplicious, but I did not do that. I really wanted to not have sequels be exactly the same. So in each book, she has, she goes through something else. I didn't make the next story, which was Purplicious, have her turning purple because she ate a lot of plums. I wanted it to be very different, and I wanted her to explore different themes that had to do with color because I love color. The last picture book that I did is Peterific. And the reason I did that was because a lot of people came up to me in book signings and they said, you know, what is Peter like? And what's his personality like? So I came up with that. And also the reason I did it was because Pinkalicious, I started talking to PBS about doing a television show. And they said that they didn't want to do a show that was for girls. And there wasn't a market for a show that was for girls. So that's a very interesting thing to think of, that in today's climate, how challenging it is to get a show that's geared towards girls and boys, but that would just have the name Pinkalicious in it. So I knew that I wanted to do a show, and I wanted the title to be, if it couldn't be Pinkalicious, it could be Pinkalicious and Peterific, so that's why I came up with Peterific. I also have done a lot of licensing, so I've done a toy line, products, dolls, bikes, unicorns, games. I've had, doing Pinkalicious has really enabled me to do so many different things in my life that I never thought were possible when I first started working on Pinkalicious. And somebody asked me, did I ever think that I would be doing this when I first wrote Pinkalicious? The answer is absolutely not. I wrote Pinkalicious just so I could have work, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I've also written a musical, which is off Broadway. It was supposed to only be open for 2 weeks. It is still off Broadway, and it tours around the country. And I worked with a composer on that. And now there's the TV show on PBS, and it's Pinkalicious and her friends. I just have to get back to Kendra. Kendra is one of my favorite characters. She's on the end. She's one of the girls who loves the color black. And the little girl who's the voice of Kendra, she came into the audition, and she was she was auditioning for Pinkalicious. And we said to her, well, do you like the color pink? She said, I hate the color pink. And we're like, oh my gosh, she would be so great as Kendra, and she's amazing. Anyway, so this is where I grew up. I grew up in Brooklyn Heights, right under the Brooklyn Bridge, right over there. And I grew up coming to Westport every summer, and this is what it was like when I was a kid riding the subways. It was hideous. There was graffiti everywhere. There was crime everywhere. People were being mugged constantly. It was not the beautiful city that it is now, that's very safe. And you can walk around, and it's like overcrowded with people. There were rats and roaches everywhere. This was my gym. For gym, I went to a private school, but they didn't really think about what gym was. So we had to go to Cadman Plaza Park, which is right next to the Brooklyn Bridge, and stand next to this really horrible, oppressive war memorial and freeze. We had no swimming pool. We had no kayaks. Or canoes. We had no climbing wall. It was just horrible, and I was always freezing. So I would always cut class. Yes, I went to a school where I could cut class, and I would go to the library, and the librarian knew that I was cutting the class. and she would always bring books for me. She was amazing. I absolutely love librarians. Shout out to librarians because they, they were very helpful. So I developed a love of children's books, and because I've always loved pictures. And I would look at the children's books and imagine that one day I would be a children's book author. The books that I really loved were Madeline. I loved Madeline. She was a very strong character. This is the one piece of artwork that made me want to become an artist. This is Miss Clavel running. I don't know if you remember the story. Running because Madeline has appendicitis. And she's going as fast as she can. And I love it because there's just so much emotion. It wasn't Leonardo da Vinci, it wasn't Michelangelo that inspired me to be an artist. It was this piece of artwork. And it's just so simple and has so much emotion. So when I wrote Pinkalicious, I wanted to do an homage, and this is my homage to Miss Clavel. Do you see the way that I distorted Pinkalicious and I used yellow? And there is Mom. Another book, this is out of print because it's so bizarre. It's called The Lonely Doll, and I love The Lonely Doll because it was illustrated with photographs, and she was a doll who lived in New York City with Mr. Bear and Little Bear, and I always thought I could, when I was in New York City, might actually see them. So I really love this book. She actually is very naughty. She takes lipstick and she draws all over the mirror, and then Mr. Bear spanks her. And I think this is why it is not in circulation anymore. The other book that I really loved was Eloise. Eloise was also very naughty, and her parents were never around, and she, was getting into trouble with her pug all the time. Another book that I loved was Harriet the Spy. The books that I loved had very strong female characters. I had this book. It was Hansel and Gretel. My grandmother gave it to me. This is a lenticular, otherwise known as a Tinky Winky. You move it and it shows different images. And this really inspired me, one, because I loved candy, and two, because it was made with dolls. Again, I really loved things that were made from real things. Somebody asked me what my favorite foods are. I have always really loved cupcakes. Now I'm vegan, gluten-free, so I don't have as many cupcakes as I used to have. This is my absolute favorite food. I'm sorry Leah isn't here because she would be going, ew. You can see it's filled with spinach and then it's berries on top, and it is so delicious. It is nectar of the gods. So what I did before I became a children's book illustrator, I was an editorial illustrator, which means I did magazine covers, I did newspapers, I did work for the New York Times, I did book covers, but they were adult book covers. Here are some of the magazine covers. I did a lot of work for Harper's Magazine. It was very fast-paced. I did work for Time Magazine. Time would call me on a Friday. I was teaching at School of Visual Arts in New York City, and I would have my students there while my students were working. I would come up with sketches. I'd go to my studio. I'd fax them my sketch. I'd do the finish. The messenger would come and pick it up. I would have about 3 hours to do my artwork. So when you do editorial illustration, it's really, really fast-paced. But what happened was, everybody began to get their news on the internet, and magazines and newspapers lost a lot of advertising. So all the work that I used to have sort of fizzled out. And I used to work on 14 different jobs at once for various publications. So I began to think, what was it that I wanted to do with my life? And I looked at my friends who had a lot of work, and those were children's book authors and illustrators. So I showed my work to various publishing companies, and you can see these collages, and they said, we don't have any work for you. There is no way you can be a children's book illustrator. We can't imagine what your work would be like. If you want to be a children's book illustrator, you're going to have to write the story. So I began to write a lot of different stories, and I began to send them into publishers, and guess what, they were all rejected. So I'm just showing you this because you might, in your life, face a lot of rejection, but don't worry about it. Just keep going and just keep persevering, no matter what it is that you're doing. Then one day, it was April 1st. April 1st is my very favorite day of the year because it's the one day of the year you get to tell stories and not tell anybody their stories. Lies are just stories, and you have to be very imaginative to come up with good ones. Not that I'm a psychopath, but I do remember scaring a few babysitters when the kids were little, and because I would just come in and I'd say, like, there's an ostrich did you see the ostrich in the driveway? You've got to be very careful when you back your car out. And I would say things like that. I would say things like, there are fish flying around in the sky. Did you see them? They are amazing. They have big wings or did you notice that the pansies have faces and they're laughing at you? You better be careful. They're making fun of you. Don't go too close. They might even spit. Or there's a flying machine. There are flying machines all over. So I always made up stories. And on this one particular, I think it was 2004 or 2003, Pinklicious was published in 2006, and it took a couple of years to get it published. I wrote an email, and I sent it to my friends and family that my daughter, Christina, had turned pink from eating too many pink cupcakes. Now, Christina really loved the color pink, and she wore a pink princess outfit every single day. And the only way that I could wash it was to slip it off of her at night while she was sleeping. She wore it all day, she wore it all night. She lived in it, she loved it. She loved dresses, she loved soprano-sounding voices, she loved everything feminine. She really loved cupcakes. So I wrote an email and I sent it to my friends and family, this is it, and I said that that Christina had eaten too many cupcakes and turned pink, and that I took her to the doctor, and the doctor said she had a very bad case of pancreatitis. And a friend of mine was supposed to come over with her daughter for a play date that day, and the friend called me up and she said, well, I'm very worried about your email. And I called my doctor, and my doctor said he had never heard of pancreatitis, but it might be contagious. So I am not bringing my daughter over for the play date today. This is true. And I said, okay, because my rule of thumb is I never tell anybody it's a joke on April Fool's Day. I just can't. So I went, okay. And then, I know, you're worried. You don't want to be friends with me anymore, do you?
No, you're a friend.
So then, the next day I told her that it was a joke, and she said that would make a really good children's story. So with my sister, this is us in Westport, on Rayfield Road. That's my sister, Elizabeth, who's actually a doctor. She no longer works with me, and there I am. And my sister, for the first, for Pinklicious and Purplicious, she was sort of my editor and my muse, definitely my muse, and came up with a story. So the first thing I did was I wrote more of the story. I began to think, how does one write a children's book? And I began to sketch in the margins to imagine what would it look like? What would the characters look like? And I started doing drawings. Would the dad have a fedora? Would Pinklicious have really big ponytails? Would the dad be bald? Would that be the mom? Oh my gosh. What are the things? And then I began, because I'm a collage artist, which means taking little pieces of paper and putting them together, I began to think, what are the things that I love that I would want to incorporate? And doilies are a really big thing for me, wallpaper, recipes. Then I broke it down. So a picture book has 32 pages. So it's the front, the jacket, the half title, the copyright, and then this is actually for the book Purplelicious. And I began to sort of figure out what was going to happen in each scene. I designed my book because collage art takes a lot of time. Actually, it takes a lot more time than just doing a drawing, which is very direct. Collage takes a huge amount of time because I'm taking pictures, I'm finding elements, I'm scanning it into the computer, then I'm cutting them out, I'm rearranging, I'm also painting and scanning it in. It takes a huge amount of time. So I did spreads instead of a single piece of artwork. A spread is one piece of artwork over 2 pages. After I do that, I do a larger drawing. This is a thumbnail. It's about this size. And this is from the book Goldilicious. And if you look over there, there's a little tea party. And that's how it turned out. So you can see my sketch in my mind. I see everything. I see the color. I see how it's going to look. And then that's how it ends up looking. This, here it is. So to get it published, I had to do a book dummy. And a book dummy is this. So this was the first book dummy I did. This was for myself. And it's basically a little book where I enlarged my thumbnails. And, do you see this one? Do you see how naughty Pinkalicious is? How this is Pinkalicious having a sugar high. I totally modeled it after my daughters. So there she is. She's eating cupcakes, and there she is with the sugar high, having a little tantrum, getting very upset. Here's the page where she eats green food, and that's the sketch. And that's what it ended up looking like in the finish. And so for each of those things, I go to old advertisements for like sugar peas and relish, and then I take pictures and I scan it in and change the color. This is what the dummy looked like that I submitted to the publisher. And I got very, very lucky. Well, first let me tell you that I wanted to make it pretty so it would be attractive and somebody would want to touch it and hold it. So I put sparkly pink ribbon on it, and in my kitchen I wrote out in frosting the word Pinkalicious. I took a photograph of it, and then I collaged it and photoshopped it in. You'll notice that her mouth is really different in this, and her nose is very different. This is how she looked like when I first started. And when I did find a publisher, my editor wisely advised me to simplify the face. And then it became much simpler. So I was very, very lucky. I took it to a couple of publishers. One said it had no literary value at all. It would never be published. It had no educational value, and libraries would never carry it. And the editor who said that had 2 boys. She didn't have a daughter, and she said it was worthless. And she said, P.S., your artwork sucks as well. So she has since apologized to me. I just want you to know that. She had a daughter, and one day I'm signing books, and she was in line to have a book signed, and she said, your book is my daughter's favorite book, and I apologize. So that's my little lesson, don't take things personally. Of course I did, and I went home and I cried and cried and cried, and I said, I'm going to show her. And I kind of sometimes get on fire, and revenge is really great, and so it's highly motivating for me. And so I made a website, and I put my artwork. When I made my book dummy, I did a couple of finishes. So I put my whole book dummy on a website, and I found the name of another editor, and I called the editor really early in the morning while I had a feeling that she was answering phone calls. And so it was like 7 in the morning, because a lot of people get in early to get work done. She picked up the phone, And I said, you know, I have a book you might be interested in. And she said, well, what does it look like? And I said, go to this URL right now, it's top secret. And I told her, and she looked at it, she looked at the artwork, she said, okay, bring it by tomorrow. I just did a Billy Crystal book, I can do whatever I want now. Come in tomorrow. So the next day I rode my bike uptown. I was living down in the East Village, I rode it uptown, and I brought the book, and she said, oh, I love the ribbon. It's very pretty. And she said, well, leave it here and let me see what I could do. And she spent 6 months walking around, individually talking to various editors, and when they had a big meeting and were voting on books, she was able to get it published, which was amazing. So at that time, they printed only 6,000 copies. They didn't think it would sell. Again, at that time, there really weren't a lot of girl books. Not that my book is a girl book, but it has a female character. So I'm saying girl book just to shorten that instead of saying a book with a female character. Anyway, so here's the finish. Then I did Purplicious, and Purplicious, all of my books are inspired by my daughters, or by other kids, or by me just getting in touch with my inner child. So Purplicious came about because I was at a party, and there was a teacher who taught at a private school, and she told me that they had to do an intervention in her first grade class because all the kids ganged up on a little girl who liked the color pink. And all the kids said, how could you like the color pink? We only like the color black. And they made fun of her, and they teased her, and they had to have all the parents come in. And I never forgot that. So that story I heard like 20 years ago. It was like way before I even wrote a children's book, and I always thought, oh my God, that's interesting. So that's what happened in this book. And I wanted to teach my children to have the courage to stand up for what they believe in no matter what. So even if there is a gang of kids saying, you can't like the color pink, I wanted my children to understand you need to have courage and always stand up for what you believe in. Then I did Goldilicious. Now, this was based on my amazing daughter, Leah. Leah is so imaginative. So when she was a kid, she was always telling stories to herself and to everybody else. And in fact, she had an imaginary friend who was it was a little leopard. And we had to be very careful not to sit on it. And we would bring it food at dinner. And she was always making up stories. It was amazing. So this, I thought, what would Pinkalicious have as an imaginary friend? She would probably have a unicorn. So this was really what would happen if Pinkalicious had a unicorn. What would happen throughout the day? And then Silverlicious happened because my amazing daughter Leah came up to me one day and she said, Mommy, Mommy, my sweet tooth came out. One of her teeth had come out, and it was in her hand. And she said, can you get me something sweet to eat? And I said, oh, you are brilliant. No, I can't. I have to write a story about how sweetness comes from this inside, but thank you for inspiring me. And I went and I wrote this story about how sweetness comes from the inside. And then Emeraldalicious came about because I was going around the country on book tour, doing a lot of book signings, and kids would say, what about the color green? You know, what about the environment? What would you do? So I began to think, what would I do if I had to do a story about the environment? And then Aqualicious happened because I was walking on Campo Beach, and I love to collect things, and I love to collect sea glass. And I always am thinking, what would be the greatest thing ever? This is a really good way to think in life, by the way, because if you think that, great things happen to you. So I was walking along the beach, and I was thinking, what would be the greatest thing ever for Pinkalicious if she was walking along the beach? And the answer was, okay, well, she would find something. Well, what would she find? Oh, I thought, this is the kind of conversation I have with myself, by the way. I'll do both parts. Oh, I would really like to find an oyster. What would you want to find in the oyster? I would really like to find a pearl. Oh, but what could be better than a pearl? What would be really, really fun? Oh, gosh, what about a mermaid? Mermaids are really amazing. I would love to see a mermaid. Mermaids don't exist. Oh, sure they do. And not only would I like to see a mermaid, I'd like to see a miniature mermaid. Yes, let's see a miniature mermaid. What would that be like? So anyway, I came up with the idea of a miniature mermaid. Because I thought, what could be more fun than a very small mermaid, right? You play with dolls. Well, you guys probably don't play with dolls anymore. You know, one plays with dolls, and you always imagine that they would come to life. So miniature mermaid is like a doll that comes to life. And then I wrote Peter Ruffick, which was really about reaching for the stars and achieving your dreams. And anyway, so this is my studio. I live and work at home above the garage. Those are some little Pinkalicious bicycles. Here are the dolls that I talk to while I'm working, and there are Pinkalicious dolls. There's also a unicorn, and this is my computer. So I work on a Wacom tablet, which you know, and I draw on it. And there's my pen tool, and I'm working on Silverlicious at this. I have filing cabinets. If you go back. Oops. All of these are filing cabinets, and they're all filled with tiny little images. And I have files like shoes, boxes, toys. Here's my wing file. It's got birds and butterflies and angel wings. Here's my dessert file with Jell-O and candy canes. Here's, I like to get a lot of my images from old catalogs, like Sears and Roebuck catalogs from the 1960s. I love the design of the clothing. And if you notice, my stories are all very timeless. There are no cell phones. There are no computers. Even the phones have cords. And that's because at that time period, you couldn't go on the phone to be, in that time period of my imagination, I should say. You can't go on your phone. You have to come up with other ideas to be creative and imaginative. This is how I did Mom's hair. I cut out little pieces of paper. This is over there, that's Pinkalicious's ponytails. When she gets angry, they get straighter. That's Mom's hair, so that's a collage that I scan into the computer. I'm going to show you how I create my artwork now. I also use three-dimensional elements. This is a drawer of doilies, which I then scan into the computer. This is a drawer that's filled with different textures, grass textures. This is some paper that I bought. Now, notice that pattern. I'm going to show you where it appears in my artwork. There it is, in the butterfly wings. There's a map in the center, and then there are numbers. And you can see the graph paper, and the B has musical notes. So basically, what I like to do when I create my art is I create a lot of layers and levels so that it looks like a butterfly, but then you look closer and you see a lot more details. So I'm just going to show you how I created the scene in Pinkalicious in the playground. So I scanned in a lot of flowers, but I also created some collaged flowers. Like I sponge painted that, and then I cut it out in the shape of a flower. There's part of a doily over there. There's another part of a doily. There was wallpaper with polka dots. And for the clouds, I took pictures of clouds, and then I scanned them into my computer, and I changed the color. And then I start painting with an airbrush. For the grass, I took pictures of grass, and then I scanned it in, and I painted over it. And then these, you can see, these are the different layers. And I have often so many layers. I don't know if you've all worked in Photoshop, but it's very addictive, and you never want to do anything else. And I've had so many layers in it that it actually goes black. That's how many layers. So then I put Pinkalicious in. Her wings are made out of doilies that I've scanned in. Her skirt was actually a slip from a Sears and Roebuck catalog from the 1960s. And same with the play set. That was from the 1960s Sears catalog. There's her friend Allison. There's Peter. Peter always wears shorts. The reason he wears shorts is because my father grew up in Germany, and he told me as a kid he was only allowed to wear pants when he turned 13. And I thought that was really, really interesting. And even in the winter, the boys had to wear shorts. So there it is. You can see the musical notes on the leaves. And this is how I did the cover for Peterific. First I do a sketch, and then I start working on it. I have all the other covers because I want the design to be consistent. And then I start, scanning things in. Peter always wears a striped shirt. I put in the face. I took pictures of blocks and start scanning in pictures of blocks. And then I start building the tower. In the story he builds a tower, so I begin to think, what would it look like? My favorite thing to do is to do sky. I love painting skies. I could just paint skies day and night. But I like to use star constellations and rays and put clouds in. So that's what I started doing here. I'm starting to work on the sky, and then I wanted to have a shooting star, and that's sort of, I build up, I put light, highlight, shading, and that's what it ended up looking like. This is some artwork that kids did that I thought was very cute. And they have ideas, Coralicious. I think this one's the funniest one ever. Someone who worked really hard on this. This is amazing. This was, so I was at a book signing and a little kid drew a portrait of me. Maybe I was terrified. There's a Pinkalicious website, and there are lots of downloadables. There are lots of games, and you can turn yourself pink, or you can make yourself into Pinkalicious. And so this is what inspires me. This is my garden. I'm really inspired by nature and by flowers and plants, and my favorite thing to grow are dahlias. And these are dahlias, and I came up with an idea for the TV show. So the thing about dahlias is that they come in all shapes and sizes. They can come this big, but they also have flowers that are this big, dinner plate flowers, and they just get bigger and bigger and bigger. So I thought it would be really fun to write a story about a flower that just keeps going bigger and bigger and bigger when you sing to it. Now in the TV show, the curriculum is the arts. It's music, dance, theater. So it's really beneficial to plants to sing to it. So I thought I would show that to kids. And so whatever you do in life, I guess my message here is do things in life that you love, because it will inspire all aspects of your life. So always go to joy and happiness, except for if it's hurting people. That was a joke, by the way. Thank you. That's my cat. Gustavo, who really, that's his favorite rug. He's very fat. That's my dog, Snickers. They also inspire me. That's behind my house. Those are the two characters that you saw in the beginning. My amazing daughter, Leah, and my other amazing daughter, Christina. And I just want to say that knowledge is limited while imagination embraces the entire world. Albert Einstein understood that, and no matter what you do in life, whether or not it's science, art, math, you have to be imaginative and always think of things in a different way. You can change the world with your imagination. And my question to all of you is, what are you going to create? What are the things that inspire you? And I'm hoping that maybe you'll go home and you'll do a drawing, or you'll write a story, and do something that's really fun. And that's it. Thank you. Go to the questions?
Yeah, we can. We have, what time is it right now? We have about 20 minutes, so we can start with questions, and then we can go from there.
Okay. All right, so you folks had a really, really good list of questions. And I'm wondering, should I go from this list, or do you guys want to raise your hands and ask me the questions directly, which would be a little bit more fun and personable? What would you like to do?
How about we start, if there's anyone who has questions right now, especially based on the presentation you just saw, why don't we start with student questions, and then if we're feeling very shy, then we can look to the
Yeah,
list. Does that
would be
work
great.
with everyone?
And so you can ask me the questions that you sent to me, too. Who's got a question? Don't be shy. Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. Okay, this is your age. Don't worry. When you get to college, you're going to have to start raising your hands. Okay, so I'll go from this list. Maybe I answered all your questions. Did I answer all your questions? Let's see. What audience is this book targeted towards? So when I wrote the story, I didn't really think who it's targeted towards. I really thought it's for anybody who likes stories. The publisher markets it, and the publisher, if you see the book, they have to put an age limit, and that's because the inks can be toxic. So they can't say, I say to them, it should say from 1 to 101. But they say, no, it's got to be from 3 to 7, so that parents who are looking to buy the book know. And they can't say 1 because babies might eat the pages and get poisoned. That's true. Let's see. Why did you choose the color pink? I chose it because my daughter really liked the color pink. Let's see.
Folks, if you have questions as we're going through this too,
Yeah.
feel free to raise your hand.
Any questions so far?
Oh, you're all being
Okay.
super shy.
How many
Oh, wait,
draft-
we see one.
over here.
Oh, yes! Oh, my gosh! Fantastic!
You're good, you're good.
You're going to get an A!
How long does it take you to write a book?
Okay. That's a really good question! You are so awesome! Writing the book usually takes less time than illustrating a book. So what I usually do is I go away for Christmas with my family, they go skiing, and I stay in the hotel room and I write stories. And I usually work on 3 different stories at once, and I go in a lot of different directions. And then I figure out the one that inspires me the most, and then I start working on it. And I will do draft after draft after draft after draft. I'll often do like 12 drafts, or I keep rewriting it. And then after I come up with something, and that can take a few months. And then after I come up with something that I like, then I do the book dummy. I am literally rewriting the story up until I hand in my artwork. That's the beauty of being an author and illustrator. As I'm working on it, I can change the story a little bit and change some of the words to make it clearer as I keep reading it aloud. It takes me about 2 years to do the artwork for a book. It takes a really long time. Yes?
Would you write anything other than children's literature?
Would I or have I?
Both.
I have not. I have not, but I would like to. I have certain ideas. I would love to do that one day. Absolutely. Yes?
How do you deal with your criticism?
That's a great question. How do I deal with my criticism? I say they're wrong. No, well, it depends what the comment is. You know, I really, I like, for example, I think as I was telling you, somebody that I work with said to me that Pinkalicious might be considered bratty because it can be naughty. And the way I dealt with that comment was I said, you are sexist. And don't ever say anything like that again, because you would never say that about Curious George. And you can't say female characters are bratty. So you need to change the way that you're thinking. So I guess it depends. You know, if they say something that I agree with, or I can be very polite and I can say, thank you for that comment. Let me think about that. But you have to, in today's world where somebody can make a post on Amazon and can destroy you in a second, which has happened to people that I know, you have to be very, very resilient, and you have to really trust yourself and trust your work and make sure that it's good. That's a helpful question. Yeah?
How old is the girl? What's your age?
I don't know. Well, she's old enough to be in school. So I always imagine her that she's like in kindergarten or first grade, or second grade, probably first grade. Yeah. Yeah.
How has having the TV show changed your process? Like, how do you find that balance between writing books like you started and then now having to work with the production company?
Well, the thing about the TV show is that it's really, really time consuming. That's my biggest problem, is that I just don't have time. And I have a couple of picture book ideas that I want to do, and I just don't have the time to do it. I'm still working on early readers because that's a collaborative process. So I just wrote a story about a male mermaid named Splash, who's a show-off. And I just wrote a story about a dragon, Gertie the dragon, and another story with her. And then so I'm working on a lot of stories at the same time, but to do one of the picture books, I just don't have time to do it. I'm so involved in the TV show because it's public TV, rather than Disney. Like if I had sold the rights to Disney, they would do everything because they have a huge budget and all the funding. But I sold it to public television, which is all, funded by grants and donations, and they're short-staffed. So I'm basically working for free, and I am on the phone with them all the time. The animation company is in Ireland, and I'm talking to them. I also want to say I have a great, there's another person from WGBH, which is the production company, and she lives in Westport, and her kids go to Staples, and she is really, really awesome. And she works with me. And it's just time consuming to do 80 episodes. First you do the premise, then you do the scene by scene, then you do the first draft, then you do the second draft, then you do the final. And every single one, I am looking at it and I am making notes. Is this true to the character? Are kids learning from this? Is this boring? Does this put you to sleep? Is this fun? Where's the greatest thing ever? So it's just so, I think that's what's really changed my life. Also, it's a collaboration. When you're working on books, you're working by yourself all the time, and which is good and bad, but you make those decisions and then that stays. When you're working on TV, everybody has an opinion, including the animation company, the WGBH, then it goes to PBS, and I am fighting for things every step of the way. So, any more questions?
We have about 10 minutes.
Do you want me to read the story?
Do we want to read aloud?
Yeah.
All right. If anyone has questions, we'll see if there's any time at the end too. So if you continue to have questions, just signal us.
Okay, I'm going to need your help in reading this book. So her alarm is going to go off, and the alarm goes pink, pink, pink. You're going to have to say that, okay? So I'm going to put my finger up. Let's practice, because I know you're very, very shy, and you don't want to be embarrassed by the other students. So you're just going to have to let your inhibitions go. Are you ready? I'm going to go put my finger up, and you're going to have to try. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Pig, pig, pig.
Okay, that sounded very robotic and slightly nasal. And I think you can do a little better. Okay, I know this is the only time in the library that you get to yell, right? So sorry, librarians. This is a really great opportunity. Can we try it again? Yeah. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3.
Pig, pig, pig.
You're gonna get better. I know it. I know it. You can get louder. Say it. Say it loud and say it strong. Okay. Here we go. Silverlicious. I had a wiggly tooth. It had been wiggling for days. By the way, this is the only book you will ever see Pinkalicious with teeth. Just FYI. I wiggled my tooth at breakfast, and I wiggled it at lunch. At snack time, I saw that Peter was eating a Chocolicious cookie. I grabbed it and took a big bite. Look, my tooth came out. Yay, I said. But something was wrong. Oh no, Mommy, it wasn't just any tooth, it was my sweet tooth. This cookie has no flavor. It tastes like dirt. Oh dear, you lost your sweet tooth, asked Mommy. How dreadful, said Daddy. That's what you get for stealing my cookie, said Peter, sniffling. What am I going to do without my sweet tooth? I know. I grabbed my Pinkatastic pen and started to write. Dear Tooth Fairy, today my sweet tooth came out. What should I do? Could you please send me something sweet to eat until a new tooth grows in? Love, Pinkalicious. I tucked the note under my pillow with my tooth and kept one eye open all night. I had always wanted to know exactly what the Tooth Fairy looks like. Tonight I would see her.
Pig, pig, pig.
I would sleep right through that. Went my alarm. I must have fallen asleep. I looked for my tooth, but it was gone. In its place were 3 red candy hearts and a note. Dearest Pinkalicious, how art thou? Toothatina, your personal tooth fairy, was busy last night. Unfortunately, a girl in New Zealand was having her molars out. Toothatina had to fly there to help her. It takes a longer time for a tooth fairy to fly because her wings are so small. Toothatina asked me to help you. I hope you don't mind. Forever yours, Carlos Cupid. Peter, come quick, I shouted. Cupid was here. Did you see him? Did you? Did you? Asked Peter. No, I missed him. I guess I fell asleep. Look, he left me candy. I put a couple of red hearts in my mouth. Eek! These are red hearts. My mouth is burning, I yelled. They taste like coal. Yum, they taste great to me, said Peter. And look at all the hearts in your room. Cupid must really like you. Cupid loves everybody. Where is my tooth fairy? I want my tooth fairy, I said, stomping my foot. My plan was to stay awake all night long so I could take a picture of Cupid to show my class. I had my camera ready. I wrote another note. Dear Carlos Cupid, thank you so much for the red hearts. Unfortunately, they were disgusting. I would prefer to have something sweet. Love, Pinkalicious. Okay. Ready? Give it everything you got. Pig, pig, pig. All right, maybe in the afternoon. Maybe I should have come in the afternoon. Went my alarm. I had fallen asleep again. I looked for my note. It was gone. In its place were 3 jelly beans and a new note. Dull, Pinkalicious. Excuse me. The candy wasn't sweet enough for you? Poor Carlos Cupid. His heart was broken last night when he read your letter saying that you didn't like his candy. He asked me to help you. Normally at this time of year, I'm having an extravagant vacation in exciting Ecuador. But I decided perhaps I might be able to help you. Please enjoy the jelly beans. Kind regards, Edgar Easter Bunny. P.S. Toothatina is in India helping an elephant with a toss cake. When I tasted the jelly beans, they felt like little pebbles in my mouth. Yuck, I said, spitting them out. These jelly beans taste awful. And look at all the footprints that bunny left around my room, I complained. I don't see anything wrong with it at all, said Peter. Looks like he left eggs everywhere. He grabbed a basket and started to collect as many as he could. Where is Toothy Tina, I wondered? That night, I wrote another note. I had my camera ready, plus a net, so I could catch that bunny if he had the nerve to hop around my room again. I would definitely stay awake tonight. Dear Edgar Easter Bunny, thank you so much for the eggs. Unfortunately, I lost my sweet tooth, so the jelly beans had no flavor. Could you please, please, please ask Toothy Tina to come and leave me something sweet? Love, Pinkalicious. Ready? Okay, go!
Pink, pink, pink.
Pink, pink, pink. Come on. All right. There's one more time, and that's going to be really good. Went my alarm. I fell asleep again. This time I found 3 tiny candy canes and a note. Dear Pinkalicious, I'm so happy that I got a break from all the toys I have to make morning, noon, and night. Being a tooth fairy is a much better job. Toothy Tina had to fly to Japan to celebrate with a little boy who was finally getting his braces off. She asked me to help out. Have a very merry day. Elf number 351. I licked a candy cane. Gross. It tasted just like hard toothpaste. What a mess. There was snow everywhere. Do you think he left some toys here too? Asked Peter. You sure are lucky. When I lose a tooth, I just get a few coins under my pillow. But I wanted something sweet from the Tooth Fairy, something that would taste good until my new sweet tooth grows in. I want Toothy Tina. That night, I was ready. Dear Elf number 351, thank you so much for the candy canes. Unfortunately, they tasted bad. Could you please, please, pretty please, with sugar plum flavoring on top, ask Toothy Tina to come out and leave me something sweet? Perhaps she is the only one who can help me. This is it. This is it. This is the final time, the final alarm. Give it everything you've got. Ready?
Pink, pink, pink.
That was good. That was good. Went my alarm. I slept right through it. When I finally woke up, I found nothing. My note was gone, but there was nothing else. I was so disappointed. Nothing from Cupid, the Easter Bunny, or even an elf, number 351. Then I noticed a teeny weeny slip of paper under my chair and 3 silver coins. Dear Pinkalicious, sweetness comes from the inside. When you are sweet, the world and all the delicious things in it will be sweet too. With love, Toothy Tina. P.S. Don't forget to brush and floss after every meal. Huh? What does that mean, I wondered. Hadn't I been sweet? Oh no, maybe I wasn't sweet when I bit into Peter's Chocolicious cookie, or stomped my feet, or spit out the candy. Maybe I could have been sweeter to Cupid, the Easter Bunny, and Elf number 351. I was really very lucky that they had come and visited me. I wrote a new note. Dear Edgar Easter Bunny, Carlos Cupid, Elf number 351, and Toothy Tina. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to visit me and for leaving me Red Hots, jelly beans, candy canes, and 3 silver coins. I am very sorry if I wasn't grateful. You made my room look beautiful, and you are welcome to visit me anytime. Love, Pinkalicious. Peter says, P.S. I want you all to come back soon. I folded it up for later. I began to feel much better. Hey, Pinkalicious, did you know the silver coins are actually made out of chocolate? Asked Peter, stealing the coins out of my hand and running around the room. Peter, you can have the chocolates because you are usually such a nice brother, I said sweetly. Huh? I do not want them. You can have them back. I'm sorry I took them, Peter said, handing them back to me. How about if we share, I said, tasting a chocolate coin. Yummy! It's silver-licious.
Please call extension 1210.
I can taste sweet things again. Hooray! From now on, I am always going to be as sweet as my sweet tooth.